Mrs. Indira Gandhi was assassinated on 31st of October 1984. I was in Connaught Place at the time. Connaught Place, the ultimate relic of the British Raj, was at that time a premier market, and we used to all go down whenever we had time to spare to just walk around, grab an ice cream, pick up some new gen fast food, an Indianized version of it, and occasionally any deal that we could find. It was the place to buy records, the place to buy books. And I had only just picked up a book about railways, a coffee table of some sort, for 5 rupees as a recall. Loving the railways is no big deal. Everybody did at the time, but I think I picked up the book because it was cheap. As soon as I heard of her death, I rushed home. I knew something would happen because Mrs. Gandhi's assassination was a political event, and politics means trouble. So, a couple of hours after I got home, flat near Vasant Vihar, the rioting began. And we were all stuck inside our homes for the next 3 days, 4 days. In this time, I looked at that book again and realized it was about model railways. And that set off a passion that has been anything but cheap. 5 rupees, and look where we ended up. I remember finding some cornflakes bags, cutting them up for cardboard, using white glue, the kind that was used by carpenters, toothpicks, bits and pieces of plastic, and styrene was not so well known in India at the time. And building houses. I had that house for years, the first one I ever built. It was rather nice. I had watercolor at home, so with cardboard, watercolor went off okay. Why did I build my train in shelves? Because it's the only way to keep it relatively free of dust. I like them furniture finished to make it more palatable. What you see in front of you right now is the woodwork I had on one of these decks along the entire wall, which was then part of a TV room. And that's all that domestic authorities permitted at the time. Eventually, I added more shelves and slowly pushed out everything associated with the family TV room in what I think the M&A people would call a creeping acquisition. And the Americans always seem to talk about basements. I was living on rent at the time. And there was this vague plan that formulated that one day I would own a basement empire. I did build a house eventually. That didn't happen till 16 years afterwards, but the basement never happened. And the reason was my wife could not stand the idea of me burrowing in a rat hole, as she put it. She wanted me in the light up there and available to the family who could walk in and out of the room. As it turned out, one of the things I did was kill the light in this room. You can see a window behind Solon Brewery Station. You can see another window behind that old Punjab village. Life is strange, the compromises you end up with. But I ended up also with a really beautiful private world where I can sit for hours, pour a whiskey, and just watch the trains go by. I'm not one for operations. I read the magazines, I know the theory, I know how it's done. I even did a train order system with the previous layout I owned, but somehow just doesn't seem to fire me at all. On the other hand, whiskey fires me up pretty good. And I can sit here in one of these many chairs and just watch the show. I did want to do an overview of this railway because when you do only close up, it gives a fairly misleading idea of what's what. And so here we are. In the beginning, there was only the middle. You talk about unfinished symphonies. My symphony was unbegun and unfinished. I started right down the middle. Here, Solon Brewery Station, just a passing loop. On one module, 7 feet long by 2 feet deep by 2 feet and a bit high. It's just a passing loop. The station faces the wrong way. What can you do? That's it. That's it. That's all it was. I liked it. And that was along the wall and to the left. I liked it so much, I said, why don't I build a second one? So I built Solon Station. And then I moved Solon Brewery to the right across the window to the horror of the wife and built this one here. I curved it around because this faces the other side of the mountain. I had to then curve it around and have this hidden trackage. Horror of horrors. I'd already built enough small railways to know what you never do is build hidden track work, because sooner or later it'll give and then you'll have to destroy everything. And I'm waiting for that to happen. Mercy, the whole railway has been finished before I start to destroy it, which is nice. I may get a few months of complete uninterrupted activity on it, but something's gotta give. It's just a matter of time. So once I had these two stations built, the question was, where are we going next? And then it was clear double decker is where we are. There was the lower deck. Solon was coming down here and into this hidden beast, and that was one deck. The other deck was up here, and then you got to transition to a double deck. Always a hard thing to do. So I built Dharampur. How was I going to bring the track down? There. This is the track coming down. Took me a long time to accept this solution because clearly it's very dissatisfactory. But I could find no other way of doing it except to do the mushroom, which means take this track to the other side of the railway and build that on a differential height. I couldn't get a way to get it right so that it would be convenient to operate to the extent that I did operate it. So I built this piece of it. And the Dharampur loop, I mean, when I made the first video, I showed it as a continuous loop, but actually I've faked it. The lowest loop leads to Dharampur, then it climbs up to Bhadog, and then it climbs up to Solon. So the loops are really between stations. So let me show you how the journey goes from a little distance so that you have a better view of what you are likely to encounter when you actually operate the railway. You would make up your trains here. This is the platform end of Kalka. And you drag your train out. You may, if you were running a goods train, you would have pulled some out from these sidings, put some wagons out. And this is the engine shed area. You take the train out into this non-prototypical section with the Kangra fort. These are holding tracks. I scenicked them because I didn't want bare plywood here. It doesn't actually exist on the prototype, and it mainly holds stock that I occasionally run, which is not prototypical. So you have the LH45 diesels that I've repainted to vaguely look like Kalka Shimla Railway stuff here. And I also have a Strangle? It's an Austrian diesel by an Austrian company, I can't remember which one. It runs around and the track comes down here right in front of Bhadog. What can be less prototypical than that? Because it's not actually there on the prototype. Well, that's model railways for you. Comes around, all the way around, and climbs up, actually down in this case, but up is down, to Dharampur. From Dharampur, loops around to the first of the hidden sections, a disaster waiting to happen, till it emerges here in the middle level of the Dharampur loops. There. From there goes to Bhadog, to everybody's favorite station on the Kalka Shimla Railway. Loops around again in more hidden track, another disaster waiting to happen. Up the hill, up the hill, up the hill, round the last of the Dharampur, the highest of the Dharampur loops, up and above Dharampur, way above Dharampur, now practically invisible, under Solan Brewery, and arrives in Solan till it curves around the last of the hidden sections, goes to Solan, through this transition piece and up to Tara Devi's station. From Tara Devi, another hidden hidden loop that I used to use for the longest time to operate the railway while I was building Shimla station. I actually had a plan to just stop building at this stage. But then I said, what the hell, finish it off. The point of any is that we look back on our life and there's always a narrative, a storyline, things that happened. Sometimes disjointed events that are years apart, but to us are part of a story. In truth, a life is much more random and consists of trivial stuff happening in between, like getting up and brushing your teeth and so forth. And so, the story of the Kalka Shimla Railway is a retrospectively constructed narrative of a lifetime project. Actually, it's a lifetime project that could have ended with one, maybe two modules. And that would have been okay too from where I was sitting. This is of course the homage to Manfred Luft piece. May get changed any time. I did convert one radio control car to this fairly indeterminate van that I thought would look like one of those matadors that used to run in the 90s in India a great deal, but that's still an anachronism. It's not my 71 frame. This kind of thing I can get away with for the time being. Anyway, the train goes around through this, what do I call it now? Suspended bridge section, and arrives in Shimla. I had lots of issues around Shimla. I thought I would stop the station here, and actually polled some of my friends and said, should I build that mid-station crossover? It's going to be too long. The station is just going on forever. And they said, damn it, if you're going to do it right. So I built the mid-station crossover. There you can see it. And so it's a long station. And that, my friends, is the overview of the Kalka Shimla Railway.